Bula. My name is Aanchal Kalal and my student ID is S11073018. I want to start with a simple question. When you think about who you are, the way you talk, the food you eat, or the values you hold, how much of that is really your own choice and how much comes from your culture? For this presentation, I have chosen question 2, cultural influences on identity. How do cultural factors shapes an individual's sense of identity in the contemporary society? To what extent do Pacific Island cultural influences have a more significant impact on personal identity than individual choices in contemporary society? Today, I'll talk about how culture shapes who we are, especially in Pacific Island communities. First, I'll discuss what identity means. Then I'll talk about how Pacific culture influences it. After that, I'll compare this with the role of personal choices. And finally, I'll share my thoughts on which culture or personal choice tends to have a stronger impact. Now, before we look at Pacific culture itself, let's start by asking, what do we actually mean by identity? Identity is what makes each of us unique. It includes our beliefs, values, language, and the role we play in life. There are two main things that influences identity. First, cultural factors like traditions, languages, customs, beliefs, and families. Secondly, personal choices like the job we choose, hobbies we enjoy, or the places we live. In the Pacific, those two usually mix together. But culture often lies the foundation, and then our choices build on top of that foundation. With that in mind, let's look more closely at how culture shapes identity in the Pacific. In the Pacific, identity is strongly connected to family, communities, land, and traditions. For example, researchers Manuela and Anai 2017 found that young Pacific people who feel strongly about their culture also feel happier and healthier. Dion Enari and Elijah Lamasu 2021 showed that Pacific identity can change over time, but they still stay connected to their heritage. Another study by Fahoko 2015 looked at Tongan Whakawa gatherings in New Zealand. Those are spaces where people drink kava and share their stories. They help Tongans keep their culture alive even far from home. Manuela and Enai 2017 also explained that Pacific youths living in places like New Zealand or Australia often faces challenges balancing their culture with the expectations of the wider society. Even in these modern societies, many young people still hold on strongly to their Pacific identity because it gives them strength and belonging. This shows that culture continues to guide people even when they are far from their homeland. We also see strong cultural connections here in Fiji, which is the only truly multicultural country in the Pacific. We have indigenous Fijians who mainly follow Christianity, Indo-Fijians who may be Hindu, Christian, Sikh, or Muslims, as well as Rathuman, Chinese, and other communities. Even though we follow different faiths and traditions, when it comes to cultural events like Diwali, Christmas, Prophet Muhammad's birthday, or Chinese New Year, we all come together to celebrate it. This unity not only makes our community stronger, but also teaches us to respect and value all cultures. Ceremonies, storytelling, communal living, and helping others all teach people what it means to belong to their culture. But of course, culture is not only influenced, we also make personal choices. So, how does this compare? Today, we have more personal freedom than ever. We can choose what career we want, where we live, and how we spend our free time. Social media and globalization allows us to mix different cultures together. But in the Pacific communities, even our personal choices are guided by culture. For example, someone who chooses a career not only because they enjoy it, but also because it helps support their family and community. Take a student who decides to become a teacher. They may love teaching, but the decision is only guided by cultural values because teaching allows them to serve their family and village. This brings me to an important point. Why does cultural influences often end up being stronger than personal choices in the Pacific? There are few key reasons. First, Pacific culture have deep connection to land and ancestry. Words like Vanwa in Fiji and Wanwa in New Zealand means both land and people, showing how closely linked they are. Secondly, many Pacific cultures focus on we before I. Communities, families often comes before individual ones. Thirdly, stories, songs, and traditions are passed down from one generation to the next, keeping cultural values alive. And finally, cultural spaces like Fakava gatherings, village meetings, church services create opportunities to share land and strengthens identity, even for people living overseas. Even here at USP, we see how culture shapes identity. At USP Open Day, students from Fiji and all over the Pacific proudly shared their traditions through food, dance, traditional clothes, and storytelling. It shows how culture connects us and keeps our identity strong, even in the modern setting. This strong sense of belonging means culture often shapes identity more than individual choices. So, to finish, identity is shaped by both culture and personal choices. But in the Pacific, cultural roots are very strong. They guide our personal decisions and give us sense of belonging that stays with us for life. We can choose our hobbies, jobs, friends, but would we make the same choices if our culture hadn't shaped us? Thank you for listening. I hope this talk or presentation makes you think about your own life. Which part of your identity is truly your own and which comes from your culture? Binaka.